everybody, I'm Roxy, this is RecmVS, and I know, so much going on. First, let's address the background. I'm back in my apartment. I am so happy. Things have gotten better, and so I'm able to stay in my apartment and then walk to my dad's place every day. It's just 3 blocks, and it's a very empty streets, so it's not like I need to take a bus or anything, so it's very safe. There's really no place like home. Now, the accessories. I thought I would do a nod to the Victober challenge. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go check out my Victober TBR video, which I will link down below, and in the as always, well, you'll find out in my Victober wrap up. But I haven't been the most successful at it, let's just say. However, I have had some great Victober reads, and I will complete all the challenges. I'm excited. But I'm even more excited to tell you about Nonfiction November, which you probably already know about, but I'm just so happy. It's my favorite reading event. Just love it so much. So in the fat chance that you don't know what Nonfiction November is, it's basically a reading initiative. It takes place the whole month, spearheaded by Olive from Book Olive. It has gotten progressively bigger, and this year there's a whole team behind it. They have so many different events. They are on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram. I will link her announcement down below so you can find out more information, because there's no way I could communicate all of that back to you. But I will say though that Natalie from A Curious Reader is hosting the photo challenge on Instagram, and I am not very good with Bookstagram. If you follow me, you know. Still go follow me. I mean, I do a lot of stories, at least sometimes. Anyways, yeah, she's doing that challenge, and I always try to participate, although I suck at it. But it's so great, so I will link her announcement down below as well. Basically, the heart of the event is that you should read more nonfiction than you usually read. If that is 0 nonfiction, try to pick up at least one. Just one book and you're already participating, especially if you choose to use the hashtags and stuff like that. It's very low pressure. And they have 4 one-word challenges. You can interpret them however you want. I'll be doing all 4 challenges, and I have chosen a book for each challenge. Plus, I have 2 books that I have to review for my podcast in Spanish. So those are the 6 that I'm definitely reading. But then came the time to pick the rest of my TBR. Not only was I discouraged to do so because I just haven't been good with TBRs lately, but also because I've just had the greatest reading mood swings lately, and I just couldn't settle. I started working on this TBR really early on in the year. It kept changing, and when the time came to finalize it, I just couldn't settle on things. What I will do in this video is show you my TBR, which is my definitely to be read, and then show you an MBR, which is a concept I stole from Leanne Rose. I will link her channel down below, because she did a similar thing for Victober, but not with the almost obscene amount of books that I'm going to do it. But still, I have 0 regrets. This MBR is maybe read, and it's literally every single book that I at some point thought about adding to this TBR. Then I'm going to pick up whichever strikes my fancy at the moment. However, in order to not have this become a multi-reading extravaganza, I am going to put some rules on myself. So basically, I'm going to have to finish at least 2 books from my TBR in order to start another one for my MBR, and only after I finish a 3rd book can I start another one. So ideally, I will only be reading 3 to 5 books tops at a time. I'm comfortable with that. Without further ado, let's just start. If you want to pause at this moment to go grab something to eat or to drink, I'm completely okay with that, because it's going to be a long video and I'm not going to cut it as much as I should, just because I really want to talk about all of these books. Also, I want your help. If you've read any of the books that I'm going to mention on my MBR and they have been extremely good, or they have been really disappointing, please do let me know so I don't prioritize them. Or if you are thinking of picking up one of them and would really like a review, please do let me know. I can't promise anything, but I swear every time you suggest a book, I try to make it a priority, or I make a mental note. Please continue to engage. Okay, the first challenge is time, and for that I chose Istanbul, A Tale of Three Cities by Bettany Hughes. This is a really long, comprehensive history of the city of Istanbul, formerly known as Constantinople, and I'm very excited. And I did warn you that I was going to fit this to any challenge, but I actually think an in-depth look at a city through time is quite a good interpretation and quite fair. The second challenge is movement. And this is so hilarious because I bought this book on impulse at 1 a.m. in the morning while being on a video call with a friend, and I was going through Goodreads back when I still used it, and I told my friend, hey, I just saw this book, I need to buy it. And I was also going to fit it to any challenge, but then there was the perfect challenge. What's even more hilarious is that Olive is also going to read this book for the same challenge, and she described it in a way that is completely different to how I've been describing it, not because any of those aren't true, it's just that the aspects of it we are focusing on are so different. This is Avoid the Day, a new nonfiction in two movements by Kirk. The way I describe this book is Kirk goes to Transylvania to look for Bela Bartok's missing manuscripts. Bela Bartok is a really cool modern composer that I've just discovered this year and I've been getting more and more into. While that is happening, he's also coming to terms with the death of his father, who's not dead but has a terminal illness, and it's sort of on his deathbed, and so it takes a really big toll on him mentally, and the whole thing becomes strange, and there are certain coincidences between Bartok's life, which I don't know anything about, and Kirk's situation at the moment. So I am so excited and I'm so pleased that it has the word movements there because it's so perfect. The third challenge is Buzz, and immediately I thought of Oscar Buzz, which is probably because I really want to read this book. I bought it last year secondhand, so cheap, and I haven't read it, but I've been dying to, and I can't believe I haven't. I'm so excited. Okay, let's just talk about it. Scenes from a Revolution, The Birth of the New Hollywood by Mark Harris. This is basically an in-depth look at a specific year, and the Academy Awards nominated very different films for Best Picture, and it sort of changed how Hollywood operated or was perceived. And this year, by the way, was 1967. I can't wait. For the final challenge, Discovery, I have a Spanish edition of Chasing Venus by Andrea Wulf. Do I have another book of Andrea Wulf, The Invention of Nature, that I've owned for years and I still haven't got to, but I still bought the newly translated to Spanish one? Yes, I did. This came out in 2012 in English, and the subtitle in English, by the way, is The Race to Measure the Heavens, and this is about space race that occurred in the 1700s, where different countries tried to be the first ones, but also collaborated to measure the movement of Venus, because that would enable them to measure the size, I think, of the solar system. So I'm very interested. As I said, this is not new, but this just came out in translation in Spanish, and so it's been all over every single bookstore I visited. And of course, I got tempted. This was translated by Joaquín Chamorro Mielke, so I'm very excited, and I promise I'll get to this. Unlike The Invention of Nature, which I also totally need to read. Then I have a book that sadly I don't think is translated, and that is Loco Afán, Crónicas de Sidario by Pedro Lemebel. However, I have talked about Pedro Lemebel, who's the author of My Tender Matador, which is translated into English, that's what I mentioned it, which is one of the best books I read all year. This is nonfiction work because actually Lemebel only wrote one novel and most of his work was nonfiction. I've never read those, so I'm very excited. If I can find some of his nonfiction work in translation, I will write it down below on the list of books I put at the end of all the notes. Finally, we are also reviewing 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism by Ha-Joon Chang. This is a Spanish edition, however, which I really like. It's a really pretty edition. The translator for this is Jofre Homedes probably, Beutnagel. I read Ha-Joon Chang's Economy, a User's Manual a couple of years ago. It changed my life. That is a brief history, although not that brief, it's like 500 pages long, but it explains economics and economic systems from their origins, basically. This one is a more specific look at capitalism, but it promises to be just as great. Okay, that was it for the TBR. Now let's move on to the MBR. I have loosely divided these into thematic sections. Let's start with the music because it's been a big music book year for me. I'm very excited for these titles. So one of them that has really great chances is The Queen's Throat, Opera and Homosexuality and the Mystery of Desire by Wayne Koestenbaum. This was personally recommended to me, so I'm looking forward to it. Elton, the biography by David Buckley. I want to read Elton John's autobiography, but I would prefer to read a biography first. Then I have a book that is original in Spanish and I don't think it's translated into English. Life and Work of John Williams. John Williams is such an interesting composer. Because of his work in film, he's composed some of the most iconic scores of our time, but he's also been quite controversial by employing some other composers' themes and materials, probably because he's been asked to. Yeah, I find that interesting. Then I have a small collection of essays in Spanish by Satie, who's another composer I've recently been getting more and more into. Fire on All Sides by James Rhodes. I've already started reading this. I want to get into it, but I don't know if it's happening, and fear if I continue this, I might have to DNF. Instrumental, however, is one of the best memoirs I've ever read and highly recommended. Then I have The Dirt, an oral history of Motley Crue by the members of Motley Crue. Confessions of the World's Most Notorious Rock Band. I watched the film, it was really entertaining. They say the book is a freaking romp. If the mood strikes, I'll be happy to pick that up. Then I have Music in 1853, the biography of a year by Hugh MacDonald. It looks at one key year in classical music where tides were really turning, specifically within the romantic tradition of classical music, which is my favorite. So I'm just very excited for this. This is a Spanish edition translated by Francisco López Martín and Vincent Minguet. Then I have How Music Got Free by Stephen Witt. Honestly, although I'm very curious to read this, I wasn't going to feature it until Olive really recommended it. She said it was one of the best nonfiction books she's ever read. So I might bump this up the TBR list. And finally, I have Mademoiselle, Conversations with Nadia Boulanger by Bruno Monsignon. I'm so sorry. This was translated from the French by Javier Albiñana Serain. It's exactly what it sounds like. I really just love that she was so iconic. She trained so many wonderful musicians, but was a great conductor and musician in her own right. And it was also thanks to her that I first heard Borges Mass, which I absolutely love now. So yeah. Moving on to food writing. All of these have a great chance because I've been craving food writing like I've been craving food. I think because I associate food with travel, and a lot of food writing is also travel writing and vice versa. These are all high priority. First I have Immortal Milk, Adventures in Cheese by Eric Lemay. Then Alice Waters and Chez Panisse, the romantic, impractical, often eccentric, ultimately brilliant making of a food revolution by Thomas Magnamy. My Life in France by Julia Child with Alex Prudhomme. Then Fresh Off the Boat by Eddie Huang. Biographies of sorts. Oscar Wilde in Context by John Sloan. Sharp by Michelle Dean. This one has great chances because I've been thinking a lot about essays and essay writing. I've been writing lots of essays and working on several stuff. I love most of these women, and some of them I don't know enough yet to love them, but I might fall in love with them, and I just admire them so much. The subtitle for this is The Women Who Made an Art of Having an Opinion, and I just love that concept so much, which is why I bought the book, and I can't believe I haven't read it just yet. Then I have My Skin Oscar Wilde. I didn't get to it in October. Hypothetically speaking, I could still get to it, but let's be real. I also chose Wilde's Women. It is an either-or situation. Oscar Wilde has such an interesting relationships to women in general as a sex class, but also just with specific women in his life, and they are mostly great women. Like, all the women he surrounded with were extraordinary, and so I want to learn more about them. Maybe after I become interested in some of them in particular, I can look into them on their own right. City Poet, The Life and Times of Frank O'Hara. I'm very encouraged by the and times aspect of The Life and Times, because I think Frank O'Hara lived in such an interesting time in New York, and I might pair that up with his lunch poems. Did you think I was done? We're not even halfway through. Let's move on. I have Gentlemen, the best writings of English dandyism. This is an anthology by an Argentinian publisher, so the anthology itself is not translated into English, but every essay was originally in English. The Book of Snobs by Thackeray, On Disagreeable People, Reading All Books, On the Want of Money by Hazlitt, Beau Brummel by Virginia Woolf, and House Decoration and London Models by Oscar Wilde. I bought this a couple of years ago, but I picked it up now because I was tidying up my books and I realized the prologue is by an Argentinian author called Edgardo Kosarinski that I've just become obsessed with, and some of his books are translated into English, so I will talk about him on my October, non-Booktober wrap-up. So I was like, maybe that's a sign of the universe telling me to read essays on English dandyism. I also have James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. I love James Baldwin, but haven't read that much by him, other than, Giovanni's Room and some like scattered articles, interviews, essays, that sort of thing. I feel like I need to read more full books by him, and this is a step towards that. The Best of A.A. Gill. This has great chances of being picked up. Me reading a couple of essays, especially his food writing, and then just dropping it and forgetting to later read it. It's just because it's kind of large, but I've sampled some of this and it is great. This one I think I'll definitely have to read. I don't know if cover to cover, but it is for research. New Kings of the World, Dispatches from Bollywood, DC, and K-pop by Fatima Bhutto. Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris. Never read any David Sedaris in case I need something humorous. The Colossus of New York by Colston Whitehead. I've never read any Colston Whitehead. I should start with his fiction since it's what he's most well known for. But I found this collection and I just thought it was so charming, and he talks about broader city life and big city preoccupations. I'm just Our Women on the Ground, essays by Arab women reporting from the Arab world. This was edited by Sarah Hankir. I don't know if I would get to all of these, but this looks amazing, so I'll definitely be sure to check out at least one essay from there. The Crack Up by Fitzgerald. Not great chances, but I still want to have it here because sometimes I just get a hankering for Fitzgerald. And finally, The Possessed, Adventures with Russian Books and the People Who Read Them by Elif Batuman. I bought this in February thinking it wasn't that relevant to me because I knew virtually nothing of Russian literature, but it's also heavily focused on academia and academic life, and I was like, oh, okay, I like that. But then I became obsessed with Russian literature and the obsession endures. So I thought my past self clearly knew things that I didn't. The thing is that I wanted to wait until having read a bit more Russian literature before I tackle this. However, I've been craving so much campus content, you'll see. So I thought I should include this on this list, just to be safe. Speaking of bookish, this is the bookish list, I guess. Confronting the Classics by Mary Beard. Houses of Fiction, From Pemberley to Brideshead, Great Houses in English Literature by Phyllis Richardson. Librerías, or bookstores or bookshops, depending on where you live, by Jorge Carrion. This is a book-length essay on the significance of bookshops. It goes through a lot of not only physical bookshops that have existed, but also representations of bookshops in literature and art. And so it's a very dense study. I'm very interested in reading this, but I'm not sure I'm going to get to it. I just included it because I want to cover all my bases. I might reread So We Read On, How the Great Gatsby Came to Be and Why It Endures by Maureen Corrigan, which would not be a wise use of my nonfiction November time at all, because I read this in January, but this changed my life. I'm not saying that the book itself is life-changing, although it's really, really good. It's just that it prompted me to make some decisions that I wouldn't have otherwise made, and I will talk about that later on, probably in my best nonfiction books of the year. But I would like to reread it just from the perspective of having done that. Another reread, The Trip to Echo Spring on Writers and Drinking by Olivia Lane. This was fabulous, and I wanted to reread it basically since I finished it. I think it might be time. Bird by Bird, Some Instructions on Writing and Life by Anne Lamott. Supposedly this is one of the best books on writing next to Stephen King's On Writing. And like On Writing, it's supposed to be very autobiographical as well as providing practical advice for authors. Very excited. The Bookseller of Kabul by Esne Seierstadt. Didn't say that right. This is actually translated by Ingrid Kristoffersen, and it's supposed to be like a classic of nonfiction. I am very interested in reading this, but honestly, I don't know what its chances are for this nonfiction November. Then I have The World Broke in Two, Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot, D.H. Lawrence, E.M. Forster, and the Year That Changed Literature by Bill Goldstein, A Secret Sisterhood, The Hidden Friendships of Austen, Bronte, Eliot, and Wulf by Emily Midorikawa and Emma Claire Sweeney. I have been talking about this book for a long time. I should get to it soon. Memoirs. Deborah Levy's The Cost of Living, Brother and Sister by Diane Keaton, which is signed. I want to start reading her memoirs, and I wanted to start with her early ones, but I just found this at a bookstore, and how could I say no? In the Land of Men by Adrian Miller. I put this on hold because I wasn't enjoying it. This started out great, and then she actually meets David Foster Wallace, and I was like, ugh, boring. Not because of David Foster Wallace, it's just the way she reports every single conversation they have. But I've been craving, again, like campus or writerly life, publishing life kind of stories. I think it's the perfect time to pick this up, and if I'm not enjoying it, definitely DNF it, which would be a shame because I would have to get rid of it, and I already like marked some part, but hey, you know the risks when you start highlighting and writing on your books. So yeah, I've seen The Future and I'm Not Coming, the art scene of and downtown New York in the 1980s by Peter Makoff. Yeah, sounds super interesting. And this was a late edition. It's called The Animals, Love Letters Between Christopher Isherwood and Don Bachardy, edited by Katherine Beutnagel. The thing is that I enjoyed reading Oscar Wilde's letters so much that I thought I should add, just in case I get the craving for another letter collection to my MBR. I put these following 5 in a different pile, but I think actually they are continuing the literary bookish thing, whatever. This is a book in Spanish called The Chilean Belle Epoque, and it's basically what the elite and women specifically were doing in Chile during La Belle Epoque. This has one of the greatest chances because I've been told it's amazing, but also because it would work well for a nonfiction challenge that I'm doing. Then there is Dietrich and Riefenstahl, Hollywood, Berlin, and a Century in Two Lives by Karin Phelan, translated by Shelley Frisch. Oh, can you believe I owned this for like, I want to say 3 years and only just realized it's translated, which is a disgrace. The Lonely City by Olivia Ling, Adventures in the Art of Being Alone. I mentioned this as one of the books that I wanted to read this year. At the same time, something didn't happen because of the whole pandemic. So then I thought I might postpone it, but I also really want to read it. If I like it, I can always reread it. It's just a stupid me thing. Then one that has amazing chances because I really want to read it is The Downtown Pop Underground, New York City and the Literary Punks, Renegade Artists, DIY Filmmakers, Mad Playwrights, and Rock and Roll Glitter Queens Revolutionized Culture by Kembrew MacLeod. What's not to love? And then finally, Sylvia Beach and the Lost Generation. I really want to read this. It's just that it's a bit big. I want to read all of these books. That's why I have them. But I want to read so many of these books right now. As you can see, I'm in the literary or like bookish books kind of mindset. So those had the greatest chances. But at the same time, because I will have been reading so many of those by mid-nonfiction November, maybe I'll then swing back and go a completely different way. So who knows? I have 3 books that fall under the category of feminism. The first is Why the Middle East Needs a Sexual Revolution. Oh, that's the subtitle. The name is Headscarves and Hymens by Mona El-Tahawi. This is supposed to be super controversial and I'm here for it. Then I have The Illusions of Gender by Cordelia Fine, The Real Science Behind Sex Differences. This is basically trying to debunk the fact that women and men have different races. Then I have Trainwreck by Sadie Doyle, and this is The Women We Love to Hate, Mock, and Fear, and Why. And I've talked about this already. I really want to get to it. It's just that I haven't. Then I have 3 books that fall under the category of linguistics. Metaphors We Live by George Lakoff and Mark Johnson, or Lakoff, I think. This is one of the seminal texts of modern and contemporary linguistics. If you've ever studied linguistics, you've either read excerpts from this or seen these quoted, and a lot of people don't bother to read it because it is so widely well known. And actually, one professor once said, you literally don't need to read this book. The ideas in here are already dissected and refined. And while that is true, they say this is a beautifully written book for an academic text. I'm just looking forward to reading it. I don't know if in Nonfiction November, but soon-ish. I also have Holy Shit, A History of Swearing by Melissa Moore, The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder, Insanity, and the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary by Simon Winchester. More books. Science. I couldn't leave science out. I do have Chasing Venus, but I think I needed some more sciencey science, so I included I Contain Multitudes, The Microbes Within Us, and A Grander View of Life by Ed Yong, Accidental Universe, World You Thought You Knew by Alan Lightman. These are essays, but they are sciencey essays. This Will Make You Smarter, edited by John Brockham, foreword by David Brooks, New Scientific Concepts to Improve Your Thinking. I've already started this. It's something you can just dip in and out of, so I think this has great chances. I want to tell the story of this book. Got it in a blind date with the book. Read me if you like Origins by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. I have read none of these books, but all of those are books that I want to read. But actually, this is the second book that I got. I got one that turned out to be The Prime of Miss Jane Brodie, which I had already bought. So I had to exchange it, and they were so nice about it because originally I wasn't going to even take the credit card receipt, and they were like, are you sure? Because you might have it. And I was like, yeah, you might be right. And so I was walking away, I opened the book, I was like, oh no, the edition was lovely, but I already owned it, and so I exchanged it for this one, which was my second choice, and I opened it, and it sounds fascinating. The Upright Thinkers, The Human Journey from Living in Trees to Understanding the Cosmos by Leonard Mlodinov. Quite honestly, I'd also just wanted to include this on my MBR so I could tell you all that story, which is the sole reason I've kept the wrapper. Let's just get on with the last portion, which is just miscellaneous. I would love to reread Prisoners of Geography by Tim Marshall. 10 maps that tell you everything you need to know about global politics. It was so enlightening and so interesting. I need to reread it because there was no way everything was going to fit in my brain the first time around. Something completely unrelated, Vampires, the Myths, Legends, and Lore. I need that for research, but I don't know if I'll need it this month for research, so who knows. I also need it for a challenge, however, so I might still get to it. London Overground, A Day's Walk Around the Ginger Line by Ian Sinclair. I miss London. I really, really do. So this has good chances. Also because it says A Day's Walk, and one of the most wonderful things I've been doing after the quarantine has been walking around. It's everything I want in life right now. The Poisoner's Handbook, Murder and the Birth of Forensic Medicine in Jazz Age New York by Deborah Bloom. A History of the World in 6 Glasses. I really want to read this by Tom Standage. I'm sorry, Tom. I really thought I would get this during the history challenge, and then that went down the drain for me and I didn't. Finally, I'm also putting Empire on this list by Niall Ferguson. Remember, this is in Spanish, translated by Magdalena Chocano, because I really want to read this, and I'm definitely not going to get to this for October, so there you go. Okay. Hey everyone, this is Roxy from the future. Before we finish this already very, very long video, I just want to mention that I might be receiving some books, specifically some really, really cool nonfiction books in the next few weeks, and not saying that that might be the case, but I might feel inclined to pick one or two up spontaneously because, you know, new books. I can't be the only person this happens to. And also, I've just been downloading so many great open access nonfiction books. I haven't been a great e-reader lately, basically because there were a couple of days where I was very heavily reading from my Kindle and I became sick of looking at it in a way that I never do with books. So I might also include some of those. Once again, I realize I am not going to pick up all of these books, not even half of these books, not even a third probably. It's just about having options and just sharing the nonfiction books I'm excited about, which is too many of them. But that's why I love Nonfiction November, and that's why I love nonfiction books. They make me incredibly excited. So that's it. Not that you really needed this explanation. Not that this video needed to be any longer than it already is. Luckily for all of us, nonfiction is pretty self-explanatory, so at least I didn't have to spend a lot of time describing the books. But other than that, I've already spoken for way too long. So back to the past and back to the end of the video. I'm exhausted just thinking about returning these books to my bookshelf. That's it. That was my TBR and my MBR. Remember that only the first 6 books are the books that I'm definitely going to get to, and the others are just possibilities. I am not delusional. I know I can't read all of these books. I like that my wrap-up will then basically be a tracker of my monthly mood. Anyways, please do let me know if you're participating and what are you reading, or whether you've read any of these books or are interested in reading any of these books. Also, please be sure to subscribe and like and share if you want to. And also follow me on social media. Let's interact. Slide into my DMs. I have a bookstagram, I have a personal Instagram, I have a Twitter, which is both. And so, yeah. See you next time. Upon reviewing that footage, I've just realized just how messy the background was, and I have completely exposed myself by having like all my clothes in chaos and drawers pulled open. That is who I am as a human being, and that is how I live. But hey, my books are all organized. That's enough for me, and it'll have to be enough for everyone else. Oli. No, está bien. Terminé.